cause and everything. And the spirit of the teachers was the same way, open and expansive and concerned and caring. And the main school began to do the same thing. It was interesting because as SWS was influenced by the world and the main school became very much like SWS, so that one acted upon the other. So many of the great things that SWS was doing creatively and in terms of curriculum building, the main school began to absorb those. The most obvious way that we began to be like SWS was that we dressed like SWS. Downstairs, there'd been almost a code of dress. The young men always wore shirts. They didn't wear ties necessarily, but they wore shirts. The girls always wore dresses, not too much over the slacks. The minute that we had SWS and SWS existed for a while, we all looked like gypsies. The girls all had raggy, long dresses. The chain thing the women are wearing, many chains today. SWS did that 20 years ago. Big earrings today. God, the SWS kids used to make earrings out of anything they could find. The main school began to do the same thing. Makeup, they were wild makeup. I mean, just the girls very heavily made up. Or just the opposite, stock. They would look masks. The main school began to do the same thing. In curriculum, SWS began to say, we want to have the same kind of depth of material as they have in Jim Dudley's AP European history. And so they began to have units that Dudley would bring to you or that other teachers would bring. And the main school began to do the same thing. We don't want to have the 1-year course, 10 months. We want to be able to do something two times a year we want to change. And then it became 3 times a year, and then it became 4 times a year, and then it was units. And so the school began, in terms of curriculum, to influence each other, in terms of how we looked. Also in terms of tolerance, that the SWS kids were always very kind and very nice to each other, and were having trouble transferring that outside. And the other kids couldn't stand them because they felt that they were elitist and outside. And little by little, they broke down those barriers so that SWS kids tended to stay together, but they were not the conflicts that they had been overt conflicts. There were the 2 stairways going to the SWS school. And at one point, a non-SWS would not go to the 4th floor. It wouldn't be caught dead there. And then after a while, there was coming and going on both sides. So there were many ways that there were influences. I think that if we took the little SWS, and if we were trying to say, well, there's a building right over there, or 2 miles from here. You can have the whole building, now just go away. Take your 150 kids, take your 6 staff members. We don't want to see you here. You take all your weirdos away and whatever. Then SWS would not have been the same. Because part of the success of the school within the school was that they affected the main organism as much as the main organism benefited from the small this little new concept. So I think they have to be together. It has to be like, SWS has to be not so idealistic that it's just like taking Frank Lloyd Wright and we'll go to his little place out in Arizona. It has to be part of the world. I mean, SWS had to live in Brookline. And Brookline, I've described it to you, is this mixture of all these weird backgrounds of people with different politics and different financial levels and different intellects and different everything, and they all live together. So that it's like almost like a town meeting in a way, that they had to all be together in order for the thing to function. Because if they weren't all together, then there wouldn't be any need to it's just going to be over there and they'll do their own little thing. We have a special school, you know. It's over 2 miles away, and you can send your youngster, is he creative and is she doing this? And send them over there. And it has nothing to do with the world. That would be terrible, I think. It was very democratic, which led to a lot of chaos because there was endless talking and endless discussion. Should we do this or should we do that? And no, you couldn't. Strong arguments about where power was. I was not to have the power. That was clear right from the beginning. And the minute I tried to exert power, the whole troop would be landing on me. The faculty could not have a lot of power. And the kids really wanted to run it, and maybe we should have let them do it totally. First of all, there is no democratic education, by and large, in the United States or in any other public school setting. The minute you say public school, you have a whole hierarchy of politics, rules, regulations, and budgets and limitations that make that the thing has to function all within this great big monster. Public schools were not designed to be democratic. I mean, no one ever said that public schools are a democratic organism. They say public schools are to provide an education for all of the public, but not in its governance. It never said that. I mean, all of the founders of public education, no one said the children will decide and will govern themselves, partially even. They never dreamt of that. They said, we will give them an education. And the faculties were also told what they were going to do. So public education in the Greek times, there was maybe public education. But I rather doubt that Aristotle and the rest of his tribe was very democratic. I think he was probably very autocratic, and he did his teaching his way, and the Aristotelian way was the best way, and I think his disciples were below him, and they sat at his feet, but below him. So I don't think there is such a thing as a really democratic education. I think that's somebody's dream. Was SWS a valid experience? Was SWS something that we really should do again? And if we do it again, where would I do it and how? And when I first think about this kind of thing, I say, well, yes, because it was a success and is a success. The kids were stimulated and stayed. School became relevant. It affected the other school positively, both in terms of faculty and kids and content. So I say, yes, I guess we should repeat it. It should be repeated in Braintree, in Boston, in New York, or wherever. And yet, as I think long and hard about it, I also know that the conditions were exactly right when we started SWS. There was an urgent need. There was support administratively. If we had not had that, we could not have survived. If we hadn't had the power structure ready to say go, we would not have had that. If we didn't have a population of parents who were avant-garde enough to say, take my child and do what you can with him, and we'll let you do it, we wouldn't have made it. So we had to have that blend of community support and faculty support and kids who were gung-ho to do this, or they wouldn't have done anything, and administration saying, go ahead, it's all right, you can try it. And I don't think that those things can ever exist again in precisely the same way. Most public schools have very dull faculties. It's terrible to say these things. Most public schools are dull places. Most public schools are fairly conventional and do the same things always and never try anything new. They're not daring, they're not spirited, they're not artistic, they don't, no, they couldn't do it. We'll go to, I was an heir. We'll have a just community in air, and SWS in air. No, hell no. It's a military community. The parents don't want any of that bullshit. They want, give them the reading, writing, and rhythm. Stop all that nonsense. Give kids freedom. You're out of your